All the time they were playing, the queen never left off quarreling with the other players and shouting, "Off with his head," or "Off with her head." Those whom she sentenced were taken into custody by the soldiers, who of course had to leave off being arches to do this, so that by the end of half an hour or so there were no arches left, and all the players except the king and queen and Alice were in custody and under sentence of execution. Then the queen left off, quite out of breath, and said to Alice, "Have you seen the Mock Turtle yet?" "No," said Alice. "I don't even know what a Mock Turtle is." "It is the thing Mock Turtle soup is made from," said the queen. "I've never saw one, or heard of one," said Alice. "Come on, then," said the queen, "and he shall tell you his history." As they walked off together, Alice heard the king say in a low voice to the company general, "You are all pardoned. Come, that's a good thing," she said to herself, for she had felt quite unhappy at the number of executions the queen had ordered. They very soon came upon a griffin lying fast asleep in the sun. If you don't know what a griffin is, look at the picture. Sorry, there's no picture. "Up, lazy thing," said the queen, "and take this young lady to see the Mock Turtle, and to hear his history. I must go back and see after some executions I have ordered." And she walked off, leaving Alice alone with the griffin. Alice did not quite like the look of the creature, but on the whole, she thought it would be quite as safe to stay with it as to go after the savage queen, so she waited. The griffin sat up and rubbed its eyes, then it watched the queen till she was out of sight. Then it chuckled. "What fun," said the griffin, half to itself, half to Alice. "What is the fun?" said Alice. "Why, she," said the griffin. "It's all her fancy, that. They never execute anybody, you know. Come on." "Everybody says 'come on' here," thought Alice, as she went slowly after it. "I never was so ordered about in all my life, never." They had not gone far before they saw the Mock Turtle, in the distance, sitting sad and lonely on a little ledge of rock, and, as they came nearer, Alice could hear him sighing as if his heart would break. She pitied him deeply. "What is his sorrow?" she asked the griffin, and the griffin answered, very nearly in the same words as before, "It's all his fancy, that. He has got no sorrow, you know. Come on." So they went up to the Mock Turtle, who looked at them with large eyes full of tears, but said nothing. "This here young lady," said the griffin, "she wants for to know your history, she do." "I'll tell it her," said the Mock Turtle in a deep, hollow tone. "Sit down, both of you, and don't speak a word till I've finished." So they sat down, and nobody spoke for some minutes. Alice thought to herself, "I don't see how he can even finish, if he doesn't begin," but she waited patiently. "Once," said the Mock Turtle at last, with a deep sigh, "I was a real turtle." These words were followed by a very long silence, broken only by an occasional exclamation of "Shajikska" from the griffin, and the constantly heavy sobbing of the Mock Turtle. Alice was very nearly getting up and saying, "Thank you, sir, for your interesting story," but she could not help but thinking there must be more to come, so she sat still and said nothing. "When we were little," the Mock Turtle went on at last, more calmly, though still sobbing a little now and then, "we went to school in the sea. The master was an old turtle. We used to call him Tortoise." "Why did you call him Tortoise if he wasn't one?" Alice asked. "We called him Tortoise because he taught us," said the Mock Turtle angrily. "Really, you are very dull." "You ought to be ashamed of yourself for asking such a simple question," added the griffin. And then they both sat silent and looked at poor Alice, who felt ready to sink into the earth. At last the griffin said to the Mock Turtle, "Drive on, old fellow, don't be all day about it." And he went on in these words. "Yes, we went to school in the sea, though you mayn't believe it." "I never said I didn't," interrupted Alice. "You did," said the Mock Turtle. "Hold your tongue," added the griffin before Alice could speak again. The Mock Turtle went on. "We had the best of educations. In fact, we went to school every day." "I've been to a day school, too," said Alice. "You needn't be so proud as all that." "With extras?" asked the Mock Turtle a little anxiously. "Yes," said Alice. "We learned French and music." "And washing?" said the Mock Turtle. "Certainly not," said Alice indignantly. "Ah, then yours wasn't a really good school," said the Mock Turtle in a tone of great relief. "Now ours, they had at the end of the bill French, music, and washing, extra." "You couldn't have wanted it much," said Alice, living at the bottom of the sea. I couldn't afford to learn it," said the Mock Turtle with a sigh. "I only took the regular course." "What was that?" inquired Alice. "Reeling and writhing, of course, to begin with," the Mock Turtle replied, "and then the different branches of arithmetic, ambition, distraction, uglification, and derision." "I never heard of uglification," Alice ventured to say. "What is it?" The griffin lifted up both its paws in surprise. "What, never heard of uglifying?" it exclaimed. "You know what to beautify is, I suppose." "Yes," said Alice doubtfully. "It means to make anything prettier." "Well then," the griffin went on, "if you don't know what to uglify is, you are a simpleton." Alice did not feel encouraged to ask any more questions about it, so she turned to the Mock Turtle and said, "What else had you to learn?" "Well, there was mystery," the Mock Turtle replied, counting off the subjects on his flappers. "Mystery, ancient and modern, with seaography, then drawing. The drawing master was an old conger eel that used to come once a week. He taught us drawing, stretching, and fainting in coils." "What was that like?" said Alice. "Well, I can't show it to you myself," the Mock Turtle said. "I'm too stiff, and the Gryphon never learned it." "Hadn't time," said the Gryphon. "I went to the classics master, though. He was an old crab. He was." "I never went to him," the Mock Turtle said with a sigh. "He taught laughing and grief, they used to say." So he did," said the Gryphon, sighing in his turn, and both creatures hid their faces in their paws. "And how many hours a day did you do lessons?" said Alice, in a hurry to change the subject. 10 hours the first day," said the Mock Turtle, 9 the next, and so on. "What a curious plan!" exclaimed Alice. "That's the reason they're called lessons," said the Gryphon, because they lesson from day to day." This was quite a new idea to Alice, and she thought it over a little before she made the next remark. "Then the 11th day must have been a holiday?" "Of course it was," said the Mock Turtle. "And how did you manage on the 12th?" Alice went on eagerly. "That's enough about lessons," the Gryphon interrupted, in a very decided tone. "Tell her something about the games now." Chapter 10. The Lobster Quadrille. The Mock Turtle sighed deeply and drew the back of one flapper across his eyes. He looked at Alice and tried to speak, but for a minute or two sobs choked his voice. "Same as if he had a bone in his throat," said the Gryphon, and it set to work shaking him and punching him in the back. At last the Mock Turtle recovered his voice, and with tears running down his cheeks he went on again. "You may not have lived much under the sea. I haven't," said Alice. "And perhaps you were never even introduced to a lobster," Alice began to say. "I once tasted," but checked herself hastily, and said, "No, never. So you can have no idea what a delightful thing a lobster quadrille is." "No, indeed," said Alice. "What sort of a dance is it?" "Why," said the Gryphon, "you first form into a line along the seashore." "2 lines," cried the Mock Turtle. "Seals, turtles, salmons, and so on. Then when you've cleared all the jellyfish out of the way—" "That generally takes some time," interrupted the Gryphon. "You advance twice, each with a lobster as a partner," cried the Gryphon. "Of course," the Mock Turtle said. "Advance twice, set to partners, change lobsters, and retire in the same order," continued the Gryphon. "Then, you know," the Mock Turtle went on, "you throw the lobsters," shouted the Gryphon with a bound into the air, "as far out to sea as you can." "Swim after them," screamed the Gryphon. "Turn a somersault in the sea," cried the Mock Turtle, capering widely about. "Change lobsters again," yelled the Gryphon at the top of its voice, "and back to land again." "And that's all the first figure," said the Mock Turtle, suddenly dropping his voice, and the 2 creatures, who had been jumping about like mad things all this time, sat down again very sadly and quietly and looked at Alice. "It must be a very pretty dance," said Alice timidly. "Would you like to see a little of it?" said the Mock Turtle. "Very much indeed," said Alice. "Come, let's try the first figure," said the Mock Turtle to the Gryphon. "We can do without lobsters, you know. Which shall sing?" "Oh, you sing," said the Gryphon. "I've forgotten the words." So they began solemnly dancing round and round, Alice every now and then treading on her toes when they passed too close, and waving their forepaws to mark the time, while the Mock Turtle sang this very slowly and sadly. "Will you walk a little faster?" said a whiting to a snail. "There's a porpoise close behind us, and he's treading on my tail. See how eagerly the lobsters and the turtles all advance. They are waiting on the shingle. Will you come and join the dance? Will you, won't you, will you join the dance? Will you, won't you join the dance?" You can really have no notion how delightful it will be when they take us up and throw us with the lobsters out to sea." But the snail replied, too far, and gave a look askance. Excuse me a moment. Said he thanked the whiting kindly, but he would not join the dance. Would not, could not join the dance. Would not, could not join the dance. "What matters it how far we go?" his scaly friend replied. "There is another shore, you know, upon the other side. The further off from England, the nearer is to France. Then turn not pale, beloved snail, but come and join the dance. Will you, won't you join the dance? Will you, won't you join the dance?" "Ha! Thank you, it's a very interesting dance to watch," said Alice, feeling very glad that it was over at last. "And I do so like that curious song about the whiting." "Oh, as to the whitings," said the Mock Turtle, you've seen them, of course?" "Yes," said Alice, "I've often seen them at Din—" She checked herself hastily. "I don't know where Din may be," said the Mock Turtle, "but if you've seen them so often, of course you know what they're like." "I believe so," Alice replied thoughtfully. "They have their tails in their mouths, and they're all over crumbs." "You're wrong about the crumbs," said the Mock Turtle. "Crumbs would all wash off in the sea, but they have their tails in their mouths, and the reason is—" Here the Mock Turtle yawned and shut his eyes. "Tell her about the reason and all that," he said to the Gryphon.